I'm going to pass the floor over to Kathleen Jovellanos, Capacity Building Specialist from CDIA-ADB, and she will be sharing more about why screening and prioritizing tools are important. Kathleen, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you for that introduction. So can I just ask if you can hear me clearly? Just quick thumbs up.
Yes, it's clear.
Yeah, all right, yeah. So greetings from Manila, and I will be discussing for 15 minutes on why is it important to have prioritization and programming when it comes to identifying projects, which from our standpoint as a project preparation facility would have a higher, yield in terms of connecting it or on what we call linking it to finance later on. So my presentation is about moving from strategies to bankable and climate resilient investment projects. So I'm going to be discussing quickly on, we have a tool also in prioritization and programming, what we call CIIPP, the City Infrastructure Investment Programming and Prioritization Toolkit. So on the next slide, briefly, this is what I'm going to be discussing with you guys, and please feel free to ask questions after the 15-minute presentation. So, I'm going to make a quick introduction of CDIA, as I'm very sure a lot are not familiar or have not met CDIA, and what is the prioritization toolkit that we have, what it is for, and typically when is it used, and towards the end, I'm going to share some of the experiences on the projects that I have handled in terms of, importance of this prioritization and programming approach and strategy that we hope cities and local governments can utilize in their respective cities. And then, of course, a quick write-up on what's next after making this or undertaking this exercise of prioritizing and programming. So yes, go ahead, next slide, please. So who we are. I am with the Cities Development Initiative for Asia. It is a trust fund managed by the Asian Development Bank. So we have been in existence since 2007, and the logos that you can see at the bottom of the slide are our current funders, but we have been, continuously supported by a lot of funders. Currently, we have the Germany, France, Spain, Austria, Switzerland, the Korea, and then we also have our sister trust fund who is also providing funding support to our operations, providing what we call a project preparation study to Asia and the Pacific. So on the next slide, just a quick background on what we do. If you are going to look at the 5 areas in Asia and the Pacific where we have worked with for the past 14 years, so we have provided support to 131 cities across 22 countries, and we have developed 117 project preparation study for these cities, leveraging around 14 billion investment so far. So we were able to link a lot of projects. Not all of them, if you can see the figure up there, but relatively high percentage of the projects that we have supported have been linked to finance. So on the next slide, I just wanted to quickly show you that in terms of sector, it's still the wastewater who have the highest support that we have provided so far in Asia and the Pacific, followed by the urban transport. In the past, there were a lot of wastewater projects that we have supported, but wasn't, a lot of the figures on the earlier slide are actually can be connected to that one because a lot of them have not been linked yet, because sometimes it takes time, like we do the projects and then they can be linked 2 or 3 years after the project has been delivered. But so far, a lot of the bigger chunk of the technical assistance that we have provided are also into urban transport, because they have relatively bigger amount in terms of project cost, which is also followed by water supply still. And some of the sectors include the urban renewal projects and solid waste management. On the next slide, how do we work? I have mentioned earlier the project preparation study. So when we say project preparation study, this may be in the form of a pre-feasibility study, a feasibility study. It also comes with institutional and capacity development roadmap, which helps the cities in terms of implementing their projects and identifying the bottlenecks and the components, technical and financial, that would push forward the project. And we provide, of course, as part of this discussion on project identification and project prioritization. I will be discussing further one of the projects that I have handled, wherein there was a long list of projects that we have looked into and narrowed it to 5 components or 5 sectors, and which resulted to about 115 million investment package loan for the downstream financing. And of course, we do also monitoring and evaluation. So some of the projects that we have linked so far to downstream financing, we go back and then examine how the recommendations from the PPS that we did were actually taken forward towards the implementation. So on the next slide, we delve further on, another slide for CDIA. So this is just a typical CDIA's project preparation process, how long it takes for us to support the cities. So normally, 2 to 3 months, we do the scoping and then the application from the city and then the processing itself. And we do the procurement for the consulting firm who is going to do the study for the city, which takes around 4 months. And then the project preparation study is we undertake it for about 8 months. So on the next slide, I think we're going to go through the more, meaty discussion on what is the value added of prioritization and programming. So based on our experience, when you do prioritization and programming, of course, you have to analyze the impact of project on the local government's budget. So one of the questions earlier is the budget, although the number one, the highest one for 38% is identification of the risk, which I was also like a bit confused. No, not confused, but I was like weighing on what's going to be my answer, because they are equally, the concerns that are raised, at least for our experience, but sometimes it depends on, number one, the nature and scope of the project, number two, the country, and then, of course, number three, it depends on the availability of finance or the downstream financing. So when you do the prioritization and programming, it does this. It analyzes the impacts of, number one, the budget, and identifying the financing gap to ensure that requirements of potential financiers are recognized in an early stage. And it also ensures that available resources are used as effectively as possible. So those were one of the options earlier in the poll question that was done early on. Second is that it uses a systematic approach to prioritization with a broad base of criteria to form a basis for objective decision-making and selection of projects with a positive development outcome. So systematic because there are certain criteria that needs to be agreed upon by the committee who's doing the prioritization and programming. And once you have agreed on these criteria, you have to use it for a year, or maybe it depends on how effective the criteria that has been set. But there is a room for revisiting these criteria after a year. So it may be an annual basis. And then last but not the least, the programming exercise includes projects in an investment plan that matches the fiscal space of the city and municipality. So you have to, it's important to that one, because in a lot of our experience, later on, when you do the structuring of the project, there's always the equity requirement that the city has to undertake. And sometimes the availability, the fiscal space of the city is not, it's not wide enough to accommodate that one. So in that sense, that's the value added of doing a prioritization and programming. So on the next slide, so I'm going to quickly discuss what I have introduced earlier on the city infrastructure investment prioritization and programming toolkit that we have at the moment. This has been developed in 2019, but unfortunately we haven't used it for quite a while. It's a long story, but we haven't used it in quite a while. But now, based on discussion with the FMDB team and UNCDF, we're trying to look and study it again for the cities on how we can support them in prioritization and programming. We wanted to upgrade this. That's why we wanted to showcase it also in this discussion. So to make it short, the CIIPP toolkit has been developed by the CDIA primarily to assist cities and municipalities throughout Asia to do a better and more structured job in relation to urban structuring, infrastructure planning, prioritization, and programming. So that's the first mindset when this was thought of early on. Now, the question is, why develop this toolkit? So in the experience of CDIA, many cities in, many governments, for instance in Asia, want to access infrastructure financing. So what we call, in our CDIA lingo, the linking to finance. But they are not sufficiently equipped to undertake the task of programming and prioritizing strategic urban investment. Hence, the toolkit has been developed to fill this gap. So if you look at the illustration, the gap there that we see, which is very important and relevant in terms of project implementation, we wanted to address that particular gap. So the toolkit facilitates the first step in the process from a long wish list of projects to a short list of infrastructure projects ready to be presented to financiers and project developers. So, in every forum that I go to, it's always the same thing. Financing is available, but we just need, robust pipeline of projects. So this toolkit, or in general, prioritizing and programming projects, can help you out looking at downstream financing later on. So on the next slide. So just to quickly say that what is the toolkit, or in general, again, prioritizing and programming projects. So the toolkit, at least our toolkit consists of a manual and an Excel workbook. I may just add that before joining CDIA, I also worked on a module on multi-criteria analysis for VPP projects. So in that particular module that I have developed, it's pretty much straightforward. There's not a lot of financing involved in relation to analyzing the project. But this particular toolkit that the CDIA has developed, it has a spreadsheet. So maybe the bankers without borders, they're so, I myself is, I have aversion towards numbers, but, if you see the Excel file, it has all of these details that are needed for you to be able to make a, assessment of the financial capacity and on the project itself. Because these are the things that you needed. It's not just making a priority on, okay, this is a priority because it's socially acceptable, it's environmentally, the safeguards are okay. But then again, we normally do not have time to spend in relation to looking at the financing. And this Excel would address this concern in relation to, providing a relatively very near cost estimates of the project and the requirements for the financing of the project. So this Toolkit has a 3 components to analyze investment budget, which is to determine the financial envelope of the municipality to undertake strategic infrastructure project. Second is on prioritizing the project. So using a rational approach and predetermined set of indicators. So this is what I have mentioned earlier on the criteria. And then the program project. So in a 5-year investment plan, matching the fiscal space of the municipality towards, towards what's available. So the programming the projects really, sewing together the investment budget and the priority projects. So on the next slide, sorry, Denise or Karina, how many more minutes I might be talking to?
Still 30 minutes. Still 3 minutes.
3 minutes. Okay, I can do that. So in this slide, so what is the toolkit typically used? In general, again, prioritization and programming. So it can be used as an instrument in the annual budgeting exercise. So it offers an efficient way to develop a solid foundation for the city's 5-year investment plan. And it has a progressive character, meaning the priority investment package looks 5 years in the future and can be updated on what I have mentioned earlier on an annual or yearly basis. But I would just like to raise some caveats. Of course, there are caveats on what, prioritization and programming is not. Okay, and this is very important. So the toolkit is not a comprehensive assessment of a project's social or environmental impact. So it does not cover this one because those safeguards will be covered in the next phase on the project appraisal. So it is not a detailed financial feasibility study. Again, it will be taken up on the second phase or the next phase of project preparation. And it does not replace existing project assessment or appraisal procedures. So on the next slide, I just wanted to quickly show you some of the projects that I have managed in the past 3 years that I have been with CDIA. One of them is the Kyrgyz Republic. So it is sorry, I can't, my eyes is too, okay, it is integrated development of 5 residential areas in Bishkek city. So a lot of our projects averages are $500,000 technical assistance when we do the PPS or the project preparation study. And we look at, as I have mentioned, downstream financing. So for this one, we were looking at ADB, EIB, and potentially AIIB. I finished this particular project just last November. And this one really, as I have mentioned, it could have benefited from a more robust prioritization and programming. Because during the study period that we did in the last 8 months, there were some disconnect when it comes to how the project is going to be implemented, what is going to be structure of the project, and which are the main priorities, which can be funded by the city themselves. So these were not very clear during that stage of a study that we were undertaking. But it was okay because that was part of the deliverable that we did, come up with a program that would help the city, implement the project in the next. Actually, we did like investment program for in the next 2 to 10 years. And some of our projects, like in the Philippines, I did the fecal sludge management project in Tacloban. We did the investment package of 2024 to 2030 because a lot of the stages that needs into a wastewater management really takes up time and it needs a lot of resources. In relation to prioritization, I think a lot of these projects that I have handled, including the green and resilient affordable housing project in Bhutan, also addresses some of the concerns that was raised in the poll question earlier on the risk assessment and on what are the available resources, not just the financial, land availability, and stakeholder assessments. So these aspects can be looked into when it comes to doing the prioritization and programming. So I guess I won't be able to discuss a lot of these projects that I was able to do in the past couple of years. Thank you for your time. Maybe we can discuss it further when we have the time, when we do on one-on-one, and I am happy to answer some questions if there are. Thank you.